Jasmine Crockett's appearance on Bill Maher's show was supposed to be another lively exchange of differing views, but what unfolded turned into one of the most talked-about moments on late-night television. Crockett, a sharp and fearless Democratic congresswoman known for not backing down from any challenge, was invited to talk about current events, politics, and justice reform. From the moment she took her seat, the energy in the room shifted. You could tell she wasn't there to play safe. Bill, known for his provocative questions and occasional sarcastic digs, opened with what seemed like a playful jab. But Jasmine didn't laugh it off. She went straight into her point of view, direct, calm, and razor-sharp. Right from the jump, the conversation dove into heavy territory. Bill raised the issue of rising political extremism and asked whether both parties were to blame for the current toxic climate. Jasmine leaned forward and said, "False equivalence is one of the most dangerous lies we tell in modern politics." The audience got quiet. She wasn't there to play bipartisan games. She talked about how one party has repeatedly worked to suppress votes, overturn elections, and deny systemic injustice, while the other struggles to defend democracy. Bill pushed back, saying that extremes exist on both sides, but Jasmine wasn't having it. She calmly told him, "False balance is not fairness, it's denial." Bill, clearly not used to being pushed this hard on his own turf, tried to pivot. He brought up cancel culture, claiming that young progressives are overly sensitive and unwilling to hear dissenting views. Jasmine responded with a subtle smile and said, "Calling accountability a cancel culture is just another way of saying you're uncomfortable facing consequences." She then broke down the difference between silencing someone and holding them responsible for their words. The audience snapped in support. Even some of Maher's usual defenders seemed stunned by the clarity and depth of her answer. The temperature in the room began to rise. Trying to regain control, Bill moved to the topic of crime, citing statistics out of context to suggest progressive policies were failing. Jasmine didn't flinch. She calmly dissected his numbers, pointed out cherry-picked data, and gave a fuller picture. She explained how systemic underfunding, housing inequality, and lack of mental health care all contribute to urban challenges, issues that short sound bites can't fix. Bill pushed back, saying the defund movement was political suicide. Jasmine responded, "It's not about slogans, it's about safety, and communities of color deserve real safety, not just more police." Again, the room was silent. The moment things really exploded was when Bill made a flippant comment about how some progressive leaders make everything about race. Jasmine straightened up, looked him square in the eye, and replied, "That's because race is woven into everything in this country, whether you choose to see it or not." She didn't shout, she didn't interrupt, but the words landed like a punch. Bill smirked, trying to laugh it off, but the audience didn't laugh with him this time. Jasmine continued, "Ignoring race doesn't make you fair up, it makes you blind to reality." It was that line that sent social media into a frenzy later that night. Bill, clearly irritated now, raised his voice slightly and said he's tired of being labeled when he tries to ask honest questions. Jasmine nodded slowly and responded, "It's not the questions it's the framing. You frame from a place of comfort. I speak from a place of survival." That was a turning point. The atmosphere changed completely. There was no longer a back-and-forth debate. There was one person trying to maintain control and another person speaking from deep truth. The audience, usually laughing or clapping along with Bill, was now fully tuned into Jasmine. Even Bill's usual snark felt flat against her calm presence. Trying to save the segment, a producer called for a break. The cameras faded out, but reports from people inside the studio say the conversation during the break got even more intense. Bill apparently accused Jasmine of hijacking the conversation. She reportedly replied, "If the truth hijacks your show, maybe the show was flying in the wrong direction to begin with." The crew returned from break with the pre-recorded segment, and when the live portion resumed, Jasmine was gone from the panel. No explanation, just a different guest in her place. Viewers noticed immediately. Social media exploded. People were asking, "Where did Jasmine go?" and demanding answers. Hashtags like "Where is Jasmine" and "Crockett versus Maher" started trending. The clip of her calling out Bill's framing spread across platforms like wildfire, Supporters praised her for standing her ground. Even critics admitted she had exposed some uncomfortable truths. Commentators from across the spectrum weighed in. Some called it a meltdown. Others called it a reckoning. But one thing was certain: Jasmine Crocket had made an impact that no one could ignore. Bill Maher's team released a short statement saying they had made an editorial decision to move the show in another direction. They thanked Jasmine for her time but didn't address the confrontation directly. Jasmine, however, took to her own platform. She posted a video saying, "Some rooms weren't built for real conversations. I'll bring the truth wherever I go, even if it makes the host uncomfortable." That video alone gained over 2 million views in the first day. People praised her poise, her power, and her refusal to be silenced on someone else's stage. News outlets picked up the story quickly. Headlines like "Jasmine Crocket versus Bill Maher, who really won?" and "When a guest controls the conversation" popped up across political and entertainment news. Legal analysts pointed out how Jasmine used courtroom-style calm and logic to dismantle emotional deflection. Cultural critics said it was a moment where generational power dynamics clashed on live TV. Others simply said it was refreshing to see someone speak truth to power without yelling, without grandstanding, just with presence and facts. Behind the scenes, Maher's producers were reportedly divided. Some believed they should have let the segment play out. Others felt Jasmine had challenged the format too directly. One insider reportedly said, "We invite guests for dialogue, but sometimes they show up with a mirror." That comment was shared anonymously, but it summed up how many viewers felt. Jasmine didn't disrupt the show as she revealed it, and for a program that prides itself on bold conversation, kicking her off looked like a retreat, not a stand. In the days that followed, invitations poured in for Jasmine to appear on other platforms. Podcasters, journalists, and news anchors all wanted her take. But Jasmine was selective. She appeared on a few trusted outlets and kept her message consistent. Truth-telling isn't anger, it's clarity, and clarity makes the powerful uncomfortable. Her calm in the face of pushback became the most respected part of her appearance, and people who had never heard of her before suddenly knew her name. Meanwhile, Bill Maher's next show opened with a short monologue that made light of the incident. He joked about being kicked out of his own show and tried to spin it into a laugh. But the response wasn't what he expected. Viewers flooded the comments with criticism, saying the joke missed the point and that dismissing Jasmine's message only proved her right. Even fans who usually agreed with Maher said he had fumbled this one. His credibility, at least temporarily, took a hit. Academic circles started referencing the moment in media studies discussions. Professors used the clip to talk about power dynamics, tone policing, and how gatekeepers react when they're challenged. Students wrote papers on the moment. Activists quoted Jasmine's lines in speeches. And slowly, it became clear that this wasn't just another talk show scuffle. It had tapped into something deeper. It wasn't about right versus left. It was about who gets to define reasonable and why truth always feels like disruption to those who benefit from silence. Jasmine didn't gloat. She didn't keep talking about the incident. She moved on to her work of fighting for voting rights, pushing for police reform, and standing up for marginalized voices in Congress. But everywhere she went, people brought it up. They told her she'd inspired them, that she had shown what it looks like to speak out without backing down, that she reminded them what leadership actually sounds like. She hadn't planned for any of this. She was just telling the truth, and the truth spoke louder than any headline ever could. Bill Maher, on the other hand, seemed more careful in future episodes. His next few interviews were noticeably less confrontational. Maybe it was coincidence, maybe it was the fallout, but viewers noticed. They asked whether the show had lost its edge or finally found its boundaries. Debate continued, but the shadow of that night with Jasmine Crocket lingered. It became a reference point. Don't Jasmine Crocket. This segment even became an inside joke among late-night producers. According to one anonymous source, culturally, it reminded everyone that the microphone doesn't guarantee control. Sometimes the most powerful person on the show isn't the host, it's the guest who refuses to shrink. Jasmine didn't raise her voice. She didn't storm off. She simply spoke with such truth that the room could no longer contain it. She forced a national conversation on tone, substance, and who really sets the rules in so-called open dialogue. And in doing so, she left a permanent mark on televised debate. The confrontation even sparked discussions in Congress. A few colleagues publicly supported her, calling her strength textbook courage. Others stayed quiet, clearly uncomfortable. But one thing was certain: Jasmine's name now carried a weight it hadn't before, not just as a politician, but as a truth-teller. And every room she entered afterward felt that shift. She wasn't just invited as she was expected. Because once you've proven you can shake the ground under a stage like that, people pay attention. Months later, people still bring it up. Memes, reaction videos, panel breakdowns saw Jasmine's moment on Bill Maher's show became part of internet history. And while some tried to twist it into outrage, most recognized it for what it was: a moment of deep honesty in a place that rarely goes there. It reminded viewers what it means to stand tall even when you're outnumbered, even when the lights, cameras, and structure are all designed to make you bend. She didn't. And that's why Jasmine Crocket getting kicked off Bill Maher's show didn't silence her. It amplified her. It showed a new generation of viewers that you don't have to shout to be powerful. You just have to know who you are, speak your truth, and never let someone else's comfort define your courage. Because when the system tries to mute you, and you keep speaking anyway, that's not just defiance, that's legacy in motion.